Go ahead.
Thank you, Justin. Welcome everybody to the March 30th CRCSD Save Oversight Technology Committee meeting. Just do a quick roll call, see who we've got on the call, even though I can see most of your faces, see if anybody else is joining just to be safe. So on board, we've got Tim Guston, correct?
Correct.
Jim Hoffman.
I am here, kind of in the dark. I'm going to work on the light here in a second.
Hi, Jim.
That's good. Greg Best.
I'm here.
Awesome. Jerry, is Jerry on? Jerry Kilgore.
Don't see him yet.
Don't see him yet. Kavi, I don't want to mess up your last name. I'm so sorry. I need to know how to pronounce it, but I don't, and I don't want to make a mistake.
No worries, Craig. I'm here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being understanding. I know I should know how to say it, and I can't yet. I will learn. And Aaron.
Here.
Horn. All right. So we've got a quorum to get started.
Yeah. It's called a meeting to order.
Pardon me?
It's called a meeting to order.
Let's call it to order. So go ahead. I'll let you take over, Tim, to call it to order, and we'll go from there.
Great. Nice to have everybody here. It's been a while since we've all been able to get together at this crazy time we're all in. The meeting minutes, we're going to go over during the meeting, right? Or
correct. That's on the agenda. Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to put the agenda presentation in the chat so you can all get to it. And the link is in there, and I can also put them directly in the link, the chat as well. So give me just a moment.
Well, normally I'd say we would take a motion to forgo the reading, but since we really haven't seen those since they've gotten out, I think we should go over those.
Yeah, it makes sense to me too.
Quickly.
There's a presentation, and let me get the actual direct link to the docs in there too, real quick. To the all right. And these are very brief because our meeting last time was very brief. So
correct.
If there are questions or we made a mistake, certainly let us know.
The minutes say we need access.
Oh,
I just sent a request.
I thought I did it. Give me a second. Yeah, you know what? I bet I screwed that up. I set it to what I normally do, which is to set to Cedar Rapids and nobody outside. Nobody in here works for Cedar Rapids except Jeff, and he doesn't need to see him. So just a second here to equal, because he helped write them, right? So let me switch these out. And let's go ahead and have you refresh that link. Hit that link again or refresh your page, and it should show up now.
Yep, got it.
There you go. Sorry about that.
I do not have it. Why don't I have it?
In the chat window,
Does everybody have it but me?
I got it.
do you have the link in the chat window, Tim?
I got it.
We're looking for a link in the chat window.
Yeah, there's a link in the chat window. It's the second one.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Okay, let me shoot it out.
Why don't you just read it? If they're short, why don't you just read them to us real quick?
Sure. So the meeting was called to order at 1 o'clock by Tim Guston. Proposed we approve the last meeting minutes. Motion was seconded by Jim and was approved. The agenda was presented by Craig Barnum. Jeff Lucas then shared information regarding time-sensitive infrastructure updates for the elementary access points for $29,940, middle school switches for $140,750, and the 40 analyzer to add better logging and visibility to network reporting for $61,050. Timing of the meeting was dictated by the March board meeting and E-rate timelines. After a brief discussion, Tim Guston motion we approve the products and was seconded by Greg. Vote was 4-0, motion carried. We set the next meeting date for 3/30/21, and the meeting was adjourned.
Great. For those that weren't in attendance at our last meeting, are there questions?
No questions by me.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the last minute or the reading of the minutes.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Good. All opposed? I'd say the meeting minutes are approved. Okay. Craig, your show, man.
All right, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the presentation. I'm actually going to share my screen so you can kind of watch here and there.
Good.
So give me a second to get that moved over. You're going to get a little view of my full desktop. Don't judge me.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I always feel like I need to qualify that stuff. So here's our agenda for this evening. And that's out of date. I'm going to skip that, Scott. Sorry about that, guys. Here are the meeting minutes. If you've got questions listed out, linked here. Again, that should be the first link in the chat box. I'll relink that here shortly. I always like to start with this, guys, just as a way to revisit and just make sure you understand how our work is anchored in the larger scope of the district strategic planning process. And we fall into the student learning and the systems and resources focus areas pretty prominently with our technology plan. It's referenced in both those areas. And so just so you know, the work that we're doing, the work you're supporting is making a difference across a much broader context. Again, if you got questions, let me know. And by the way, you can't see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very
Yes.
good. I can't see you on the whole screen right now, so I feel like I have to make sure that. The technology plan, that's again rooted in all of our work. Many of you know that very well. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little later in the meeting. But what I'd like to do is toward the end of the meeting, I'm going to invite you each to join a feedback session on our tech plan. As you know that the COVID emergency really changed the way we had to think about school the last year, and that accelerated, as you well know from our meeting way back in May, which was instrumental in getting us what we needed, a lot of the plans in the tech plan. And so we're currently now revising it and sort of updating it. It's not like we feel like we've completed it, but certainly there's some things that need to be adjusted. And so we've been getting student feedback, we've been getting staff feedback, we've been getting administrative feedback. And I'll give you this. I'll just give you the date now, although I'll send an invite a little later. On April 20th, we're going to invite you each, if you can make it, to attend and to give us some feedback on the next revision of the plan. So that's exciting. Again, the plan is currently anchored in 4 critical commitments, which are around staff, our student learning first. Our second critical commitment is around staff professional learning, trying to get our staff ready. The third one is primarily what this group focuses on, which is accessing resources. And also the fourth commitment, which is about infrastructure and robust support systems. With that, again, that accelerated things. So we did all these things this year. I mean, I don't know if we talked about this last time. It was an ambitious year for us. We deployed over 11,000 student Chromebooks, 2,100 iPads, 2,400 T-Mobile hotspots, which are paid for not out of SAVE, but out of different funding streams through CARES Act, grants, other creative ways. We already had 750 Sprint hotspots deployed through a previous grant, and we connected nearly 350 families to internet through an IMON grant that they got through the CARES Act, which was really cool. So when you add all that up, it comes up to, over 3,500 families were connected, and that wouldn't have been previously. And I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud of our team's work with that. We also implemented and deployed a whole bunch of new stuff to Chromebooks using virtual desktops. Things that wouldn't typically natively run on a Chromebook. We used VDI to get them there and seemed to have pretty good luck. It wasn't perfect, but we made some inroads with that, and we were looking to do more of that. So that was super exciting. Lots of cool stuff.
Did you guys virtualize the desktop itself, or were you virtualizing applications?
Both. And I can let Jeff speak to that a little bit more perhaps, but there were certain applications that we really felt we needed the full desktop environment to support. And there are others we just simply did the application. So Jeff, do you want to chime in and talk a little more about VDI quick?
Absolutely. So we offered a couple different desktop options. One that focused on mostly CAD services for our Project Lead the Way. And then a second desktop that featured a lot of Adobe software for our art classes. And then in other areas, we found specific applications. Like we would put a virtual app of Excel out there for certain business classes where they didn't need the whole Office suite. They just wanted to be able to run Excel. And then we also found a handful of older applications that would generally have been installed on a Windows device to do different scientific experiments. I can't remember the actual name of it, but it was I remember it was dealt a lot with weights and measurements and things in that realm, and then allowed them to kind of conduct experiments based on changing the different figures. So that was one of the specific apps that was out there that is not a normal traditional app. It was a little wonky at first, but we eventually got that one working. It was a Java-based app that took a little more time and care to get it functioning. Those were the primary ways that we offered it. I believe we also had a few virtual applications that were specific to Adobe as well, but eventually we shifted all that into the actual virtual desktop where we could just give them the whole suite at once.
Any other questions for us?
Craig,
Yes.
roughly what's the percentage of students attending on campus versus off campus?
It's a great question, Kavi. So it's shifted over time. So we would have started the year with probably a little over 40%. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it was a little over 40% were learning in some remote fashion. And certainly at our high school level, I think the important thing to understand there is that our high schools have been running hybrid all year for a couple of reasons, not the least of which one is Kennedy just opened in January due to the damage from the derecho. But for safety reasons, they ran a cohort model, in which kids would show up the kids who were attending in person would show up certain days a week, and then other kids would show up at a different time on a different week. It was like I said, a hybrid model. At the K-8 level, it was about 40% of our kids did. Now I think we're getting closer to that 25%. The number has decreased. More and more children have returned to learn in person. So I think that from an elementary perspective, I can tell you some rough numbers right off the top of my head because I happen to know this because I'm thinking about this for Cedar Rapids Virtual Academy as well. We were running about just shy of 4,000 kids virtually to start the year remotely. And I think we're a little south of 2,000 now, about 1,800. So at the high school, certainly there's been more of a need for this particular thing. I don't know if that's where you were going, Kavi, than maybe at some of our other grade levels.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? These are I love answering these types of questions, hearing your perspectives. It's helpful. Okay, with that, I'll move on. So I talked a little bit about that digital literacy strategic plan update. Here's kind of the process we're working on, just so you know. But we're looking. We've run it by the Office of Learning and Leadership, which is really the executive tier of the organization, to try to get some feedback from them. People in teaching and learning, people who oversee high school, middle school, elementary, special ed, English language learning, those sorts of things. We had a student focus group last week, which wasn't super well attended, unfortunately. It's hard for the kids to get there, but we did get 3 or 4 kids to show up, give us some good feedback. We're going to see if we can get a little more, but that was really interesting to hear what the kids had to say about how things are going. We're going to revise the plan based upon the student feedback and the feedback from OLL on next week, and we're going to present it to them. And then we're going to get the full tech committee together at 5:30 on the 20th. And again, I don't know if that time works for you. If it does, we'd love to have you. It will be a virtual meeting. We'd love to do it in person. I wish we could, but the office here is still closed, so we will send out a Zoom link just like we did for this one. So I'll send it to all of you if you can make it. Wonderful. If you can't, I understand, but we'd love your feedback. We'll be trying to gather in some feedback about what we've put together and what makes sense to go next. After that, we'll put another third reading in front of OLL, and then we'll try to run it out in front of the Board of Education in this summer, some point, June or July. So again, we're not talking about a full rewrite of the plan, but it's more of a tuning based upon the really different set of circumstances we faced. So
Greg?
I can't see any. Yeah, if you got questions, please chime in.
No, well, just if we're not able to make that meeting on the 20th, is it still possible to get a copy of the update and take
Certainly,
a look at it?
Yes. In fact, that's a great point. Let me note to do that. I'll send an updated copy to everybody once we get sort of the third reading completed. How about that? Does that make sense?
Good.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm just making a quick note. Any other questions?
And Craig, too, if they did miss the meeting, it'll be streamed to YouTube as well, so they can watch it after the fact as well.
Oh, thanks, Justin. Yeah, we'll have a recording for the meeting. I didn't even think about that. Thank you. Well, let's get into the stuff. This is why we're here today. So what we want to do is go through the current budgetary picture. We want to talk about some of the things we want to propose and, kind of give us a glimpse over the horizon. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, who's really done a lot of work to put these together, although all of these projects have been sort of assembled collaboratively with my team and lots of other hands in the pot here. But it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of stuff we're very excited about. Just to recap a couple of quick 10,000-foot ideas before we dive into the weeds on some of this stuff, or as deeply into the weeds as you want to go. We did receive some CARES or ESSER money from the federal government, and a lot of the expenditures we made last year, in fact, they're telling us, we haven't seen it quite all yet, but we've seen about half of it has made it back into our coffers. So the thought process has been that really they've held us harmless for the money we spent last year. We spent down save from the really aggressive balance. Well, I wouldn't say aggressive, but the nice, comfortable threshold we had last year. And we've made largely, or we understand will be made whole from what we spent last year, the totality of that $2.9 million we spent last year, which not all of that was directly out of save, but much of it was. And we've gotten about half of that already sitting in our accounts right now, and we project that the other half will be coming soon. So we're excited about that. So that gives us more options. So it's a little different and hopefully a better conversation than what we initially thought last time. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And Jeff, do you want to share your screen maybe? Does that make sense?
Sure.
That way you can drive. And so I'll stop sharing and you can take over. So.
All right. If everyone has that presentation, each of those two links are going to be the two documents I'm reviewing. One is kind of a written overview, and then the second one is actually a spreadsheet with multiple tabs looking at what we did last year, what we plan to do this year, and then a projection for what next year could look like.
Hey, and Jeff, it looks like at least the first one's protected as well. So
Okay.
you just want to present
Not
them.
sharing correctly in Google.
Yeah, just go ahead and present them. That's fine.
Okay.
The spreadsheet, I can get to that though.
Okay, the spreadsheet's good. I'll present the other one.
Yep.
Let's see here. That's this one.
I don't see anything in the chat.
Oh, let me get these re-entered into chat here real quick, guys.
Okay, does everyone see my screen? Save funding?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So the first paragraph basically restates exactly what Craig was just talking to you. we started last year with a whole lot of stuff hitting our plate that we had to figure out and make some decisions on, and we spent basically our surplus down at the time we met last year. When we got done going through all the purchases from last year, we were down to roughly $189,000 in our save account. So when we came back and kind of got into this year, and the ESSER funds started to be distributed and everything started to settle, our CFO came back and gave us this wonderful news that he thought he could replenish and make us whole for all of this. So at this point, we are setting at about 1.7 million in carryover funds. We're not completely complete yet. They're still working on journal entries and transferring the remainder. So when you get down to the bottom of that spreadsheet reflecting this year, you're going to see two different totals. One is based on the money we've actually got back, and the other one is based on what we could get back total. So you'll see that at the bottom, and that's what the difference is between those two columns. One is what we have, and one is what we could have. So as you see in the spreadsheet, I've broken it down by different categories. So I've got sand replacement, and I've kind of broken down all the pieces that we're looking at in that area.
Jeff, where will I see the spreadsheet? I don't see a link to that in the chat.
Let me get that in the chat, Jerry. I just put the presentation in there, but I'll get this.
The presentation link did show up.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I had the links embedded in the slideshow, so we'll drop them in the chat real quick.
Yeah, I'm on it. Give me 10 seconds here.
Okay. So I know we talked about this last year with our sand, and ultimately we did not move on it last summer, as we just did a 1-year renewal, which bought us time until I think our current renewal runs us through the end of November of this year. So now we're coming back and we're looking at replacing that sand first and foremost. So as we've kind of talked to different vendors and looked at systems, we quickly figured out that we really like the system we already have. So we've moved forward and talking with the vendor about upgrading as we sit and just putting in new hardware using the exact same platform. So as we started talking with our purchasing departments and talking with the vendor, we quickly found that this exact solution was available on a pre-bid contract through the Omnia Partners Consortium. So essentially we could buy it at a predetermined price, which you'll see reflected in the spreadsheet. And maybe I should clarify that anything that's in black is actual numbers that we've gotten. Anything in red is still an estimate. So on the sand, you'll see that the numbers are there in black. Those are the pre-bid contract numbers. And the specs on that take us up to, I want to say it's 70 terabytes of space. Currently, we're setting at about 40 terabytes of space. For the price point that we got, we actually got more space, even though internally long-term, we want to downsize. We really are looking to move more and more data out into Google for our users. But we couldn't turn down more disk space for less money. In a sense, to get the IHOPs we needed, that was kind of the trade-off. So we'll activate it as needed, but we probably still won't use it all right away. And then the second part of that you'll see is a backup conversation. So right now, we do have a backup agreement, offsite backup within Volta, and the primary product we use there is Veeam. Well, as we started looking into our options with the SAN, we could add on a backup solution with another array of drives that we can set in our offsite data center at Washington. And for the price of those drives, we can do 5 years of drive storage at, I believe this is also 70 terabytes of backup, at $62,000 for the hardware over 5 years. Right now, we pay $50,000 a year to Involta to back up 40 terabytes of data. So on paper, we pay a small increase upfront this year, and then over the next 5 years, all we're really paying for is an estimated $15,000 a year for our Veeam licensing. So over the long haul, we're going to save money. Up front, we're going to pay a little more. But then this gets us all sorts of more flexibility as we're able to then have less restrictions on our restores. We're going to have more local control of our backup windows. And then it gives us the ability to then explore DR options so that we can store this data in separate backups, offsite, air gaps. So, worst case scenario, we hit a malware encryption problem. Then we have a separate set of data offsite that we can then come back to, rebuild, and get back to normal. So these are some of the visions that we see that this gives us.
Hey, Jeff, little extra cost that you are referring to is the 12,000 more this year?
So did I understand the question correctly? Is it just 12,000 more this year? Is that what the question was?
Yeah.
So it's 12,000 more for the hardware, and then it's an additional 15,000 for the Veeam licensing. So it's roughly 27,000 more this year.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Jeff,
Yes.
sorry, Jeff, your secondary data center site, is that a fully configured site with appropriate security, access controls, all those kinds of things, environmental controls? I assume it is, but I'm not familiar with it.
The environmental controls are up to date. The security is part of a question that we have at the facilities level. So we are looking at asking for a more secured access to that room. Right now, it's still a physical key. We would like to get it upgraded to electronic access. But right now, that key is, I believe, the building technician has the key. Our server team has a key. And then I want to say the head custodian would have a key. And that's the piece we're trying to review is
So that's a
whether the custodian, yes.
That's at Washington High School, you said?
Correct.
So you're trading a little bit down in the environment, at least initially.
Initially, that's correct.
Yeah.
And I know in the past we have had conversations with the county about doing a shared backup solution where we can put a storage option in their data center and they would put one in our data center, and then we'd be each other's backup solution. That is a conversation I'm trying to revive because I think that has a lot of benefits for everybody. But at this point in time, it's still just a concept.
So do you have a DR? Do you have a DR site for? Is that in Volta right now for
Correct.
actually for your primary computing?
Correct. And Volta is that DR site at the moment. Yes.
Okay, so you have your backup, you have your secondary backup, offsite backup storage, and your disaster recovery computing environment there.
And that's a conversation we haven't been able to have with them at this time, but we are looking to kind of find a way to extend that relationship to see if it's possible that just becomes a storage location for us and not necessarily we buy services. We just pay for a rack space and then store information there, store backups there. So that's also still an option that's on the table.
Jeff, do you know where Involta is doing the actual DR? Is it some location outside of Cedar Rapids or Iowa, or?
Involta does have locations across the country, so they do have some ability to move things around. And I know the main technicians that we talk to are based in the Minneapolis area, and some of that offsite stuff does end up north. I do know that. So they currently do have that ability to move things around.
Okay. Yeah, just let's make sure that it's not right next door.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions on that part before I move on to the next piece?
Is the VDI expansion part of that sand replacement, and what is that 200K?
So that is a conceptual conversation that we've had simply because we've seen a good uptick in usage this year. However, we've also found that some of the lab monitoring software that a lot of the teachers are interested in is limited by the way we have things set up. And in order to make that more effective, it would require additional RAM to be added and perhaps an additional host. So that is a conversation that we've kind of started discussing, is how much do we invest in that to get it to the point where it meets all the needs of staff versus looking for another solution that's cloud-based and starting to shift some of that demand between multiple sources. So what we've looked at doing is keeping the CAD stuff in-house on the current hardware because that is functioning beautifully. It's the Adobe stuff that we're looking to modify to make smoother. And there's some services out there. One in particular that has been recommended highly by other districts is a product called Itopia, and it lives in the Google Cloud platform and specializes in things just like Adobe to deliver solid Adobe content through a VDI performance or through a VDI model to design just for Chromebooks. So that is a conversation that we're trying to weigh. Which way makes more sense? Which way is more cost effective? And which gives us the best options moving forward. So that's why that is still just kind of a red number, because we are still kind of investigating the options along that path.
Okay, and then the other red number was file level security. Do you happen to know, is that like Crypto Stopper with Involta, or is it some other product?
This is we're looking more specifically for a product that we'd bring inside for ourselves. Something more along the lines of Varonis or one of its competitors, that we could set criteria and then track access, track movement of files, make sure that we know if access has changed. Primarily thinking about our finance systems, our HR systems, our payroll systems. Those are the areas we'd really focus on. And that's a tool that we feel we really have to go find and figure out a solution for. Not that we're experiencing problems, but we want to get ahead of it because we know that's something we've just been lucky on so far. And the more information, the more knowledge we have about our file movement, it's just the better it's going to be for us down the road.
Have you been looking at what other schools are doing in that area?
We've had some conversations with other UEN partners, but overall, it really is an area that only the largest districts have really entertained. A lot of them have truly shifted to cloud. I know I've talked with Des Moines. Des Moines has 100% moved into the Microsoft cloud, and that's just what they're doing. So a tool like this is built into that cloud, is my understanding, is they're getting it as part of the package.
What's the cost differential with that, though?
That is a great question. I know since we've kind of moved that Google route, we haven't really investigated the Microsoft route. So I couldn't actually tell you on the Microsoft side of things. I haven't had that conversation.
Well, might be something to look into just from a cost and kind of an insurance side on it as well. So
Duly noted. Yes, that we can definitely have more conversations and kind of get some additional perspective. All right. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said thank you.
Okay.
So if you end up buying this backup hardware, are you've decided that it's going to go in a closet in Washington High School, or you're still contemplating where to put it?
I think initially we know it'll end up at Washington. Okay. What may happen is that we start doing preliminary backups to Washington, but then if we find a secondary off-site location, we'll do additional backups there as well.
Where do you do? So you do all of your backups directly to Involta today. You don't have any on-site backup.
Correct.
That gets replicated.
Correct. It's all goes right to Involta.
Okay, so this would be, this would replace that. So essentially, where's your primary data center?
It's actually here in our main building.
Okay. So you're going to back up to Washington. Your primary backup will be directly to Washington, and then from there, that'll be it, unless you do a replication to some offsite storage location.
That is accurate. Yes.
What's the benefit of putting it in Washington rather than just putting it in the data center that you're in now?
I think then we at least feel that if we lose power on this side of town, we have the ability to spin up a VM on the other side of town.
Okay, so we're not just talking. Okay, that's what I want to make sure I'm clear on this. We're not just talking about data backups. You're talking about a DR capability.
And maybe I need to be clear. When I talk about full DR, it won't be every solution. It'll be key solutions that we're looking at, such as DHCP, Active Directory, ADFS. Those are those kind of tools that we'd be talking about. But like our student information system, that backup wouldn't be able to generate a VM that would be launchable.
Okay, so you're going to have, but I guess my point is you're not just going to have, a bunch of disk and some sort of disk controller for backup, for storing, deduplicated backups. You're going to actually have a SAN and some server capability in this secondary site over at Washington High School.
Correct, because we currently do have some VM hosts that are in place over there already, and that's where we currently run some of our backup services. So our fallback solutions for DHCP and our domain controllers already live there.
Okay.
Jeff, I'm sorry, I'm confused too. You're not saying that we are completely getting out of Involta for DR capabilities, are you?
At this time, that is exactly what we're talking about. Is changing how that relationship works. Right now, we're 100% dependent on them, but the contracts that we had in place aren't real friendly for restores and data consumption. So what we're talking about doing is bringing all that backup back in-house and then going out later and looking for an actual DR solution that we could then bring into the fold at a future time. But right now, even the Involta solution is not truly a DR solution. It is 100% a backup solution. We aren't able to launch servers and run servers at that site.
So you don't have a DR solution today?
Not a full DR solution. We have a secondary set of servers at Washington that serve as backups.
Okay, but you're not replicating. You're not doing. You're not doing snaps or anything over to that site and using like Recover Point or anything like that to.
That's correct. We don't have that functionality at this time.
Okay, so if you do have an event, your primary data center, you would ultimately have to identify an environment. You'd have to basically stand up VMs and restore from backup.
That is accurate. Yes.
Okay.
And that is kind of the next phase of where we're trying to go, is to find a solution that makes sense for a true DR service which we don't have.
Wow. Okay.
Well, that's a very risky proposition. Bringing in-house and keeping it next door.
I understand. And when we think about our direct access to Involta, we are still in the same boundary if they haven't transferred it. So it's not that much further away from Washington. I guess that's the point we're looking at, is what we're paying for now isn't necessarily giving us that distance either. It can, but it doesn't necessarily do it.
No, but the difference is they're a class 3 data center, and Washington High School is a freaking high school. So
Very true. Very true.
I mean, So they have double feeds from a electrical transmission perspective. They have full backup generation capabilities. So again, this is either a money-saving opportunity in the short term as you pursue a longer-term solution, or it's just a money-saving opportunity, and I wouldn't really be very supportive because you went to Involta because you got a cage and a hardened environment. And again, a guy with a custodian with a key just doesn't give me a lot of comfort. I don't know, but versus Retina display. But in any event, I'm thinking that what this is an interim step to a longer term solution, right?
That is the goal. Yes, that is exactly what we'd like to do.
Yeah. Or are you mad at Involta for some reason?
I wouldn't say we're mad at Involta. I just don't feel that the service has been exactly what we hoped it would be.
So have you actually had a discussion about remedying that?
We have. And when it came down to it, there's still a lot of discrepancies, and it comes down to they want to change the working model. And if we have to change the working model, we're just going to change the working model. We're going to review everything.
So Jeff, could you do the same thing that you're talking about doing here, but basically just put this hardware in a cage? Maybe not at Involta, maybe over at one of the other data centers in town.
I believe so. If we got the correct links from our data center to their data center to move the data, we absolutely could.
Sure.
That was your idea about potentially swapping with Lynn County, right?
100% correct, because that all lives on our current fiber optic ring.
And their centers, where are they, downtown, or are they?
It's just on the other side of.
Marion, right?
It's in the basement of the Health and Human Services building, I want to say.
But it's very close to you guys. Well, it's actually across town, is what you're saying.
Yes, it is across town. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Jeff, when you say backups, how frequently do we take these backups? Every night or every couple of days?
For most of our systems, like our finance system, it's nightly. In some cases, we'd like to get that to the point where it's even more often, but the current contract and the space doesn't necessarily allow it, and that's some of the other flexibility we're looking to gain from this change.
Okay, so these backups are not being taken on any tapes; they are going into separate servers.
So we use Beam, and we basically do snapshots of the servers, and then keep copies of those snapshots on the backup drives.
So where are those backup drives kept? In Washington, or are we sending to some place like Iron Mountain?
Right now, those are 100% over at Involta. With this proposal, they will end up being at Washington.
Until the next derecho.
In which case is exactly the fear we have, which is why we were looking for an alternative destination.
So, Jeff, one last point of clarification. The backups at Involta, is that your hardware, or are you paying for them as a service?
We're paying for them as a service. It's 100% a service.
Right. So the alternative would be just to put the hardware in. An alternative would be to put the new hardware at Involta.
Right.
And that is a conversation we haven't had yet, but it is one of the options we are going to explore. So in addition to talking with the county, we plan to talk to Involta. We've also had some conversations with Google about some of their services as well. So we haven't really narrowed down what that location is, but we are still open to ideas on what that offsite location would be.
Jeff, you might consider looking at Enceiva up in Hiawatha as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's one I hadn't considered.
Yeah, they've got a very nice facility, and they've been doing a lot with the fiber optic ring on their site as well. And so they may have made it across this side of town by now, but they do have colo facilities in addition to, their other services as well. So
excellent, thank you.
They have an operation up in Cedar Falls, do they not, Jerry?
They do, and they also have a facility in Chicago, so they can, if you're
Okay.
looking for true backup, you can, you could put potentially colo your hardware in their service, and then maybe even buy a replication service to a different regional center.
Yeah.
Collins is using them, and I think they also have a data center in Council Bluffs, if I'm not.
And one in Des Moines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Is there a timing issue here where there's like a contract expiring with Involta at a certain time, and that's why you want to get out of it while you can, and then figure out what the next best thing is, or what's the timing issue?
Our contract with Involta runs through the end of June.
So the answer
So
is
it-
yes.
So that, yeah, there's a couple month window on this. That is correct.
Would it be of any benefit to have one of us try to twist anybody's arm at Involta? I happen to know that company quite well and was on their board for a very long time. So if they're being unreasonable and the solution is one, I mean, again, I don't know if it's money or if it's just their contract needs to be revised or the rules that they want you to play by are unacceptable to us. But, I mean, I can't imagine that having to bail is the only solution for you guys. But if you want me to, I can ship a note off to them and say, hey, stand up and fly right here.
Actually,
Good idea.
I wouldn't be opposed to that conversation. I think we are still very interested in having full control of the backups. So I think we would like to change that arrangement to be more of a location and less of a service. But absolutely, I think I would love a little leverage to help us move that conversation.
Well, that would be a no.
At a minimum, Jim, if you can get a 6 months extension or something while we figure out what our long-term
Yeah, that's true.
strategy is.
I'd be glad to do that. And Jeff, what I would anticipate getting from you then is a description of what it is that you need. And then I would forward that on to Bruce Lehrman, who is obviously their CEO and a friend of mine and somebody I know well. I also know two of their board members extremely well. So I would probably copy them on that and say, hey guys, this is the Cedar Rapids school system. Come on. So I would be glad to do that for you if that would help.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful.
I mean, obviously no warranties intended or supplied, but I'm glad to try to help if I can.
Okay. Thank you.
So ball's in your court.
Absolutely.
We'll get you some,
Jeff,
Jeff. Thank you so much. That's awesome.
we should move this up high on your priority list, I think.
Agree. Agree.
Given the contract end date.
Agree. 100%.
Hey, Jeff, just one other thing that, I know you guys are loaded and you guys have been doing a fantastic job. But I think what we've learned here tonight is that you really don't, the Cedar Rapids School District does not have a disaster recovery solution. And that really worries me. If you've got dollars that you didn't have to spend because they were reimbursed, by CARES Act funding, that feels to me like that would be a pretty high priority to have a DR solution in place. I mean, you've got backups, that's great, but you go down with the current. If your data center, your data center goes offline and you can't get that back right now, spinning up. First of all, you're going to have to get a computing environment with a proper SAN sized appropriately, stood up from scratch that doesn't exist today, which probably means buying rack space or buying VMs from, or a private cloud or something like that. And then you're going to have to basically one by one restore every one of your apps from this Veeam backup environment or whatever you end up with. I mean, you're talking weeks of work there. You're putting the school district out of business for weeks.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. And that was a fear that was kind of realized with the derecho. I mean, city lost power. Our backup generator took a direct hit, and we were dead in the water for a few days. So,
but in this case, though, you just sat and waited for your data center to come back up and reboot it, right?
that's exactly what we were stuck with.
You
Exactly.
didn't even have the option. So what happens if your primary data center isn't capable of coming back up? I mean, at this point, you waited for power to come back, and you knew and had confidence that it would. But what if that derecho takes out the building, right? Or does something that you're down for a month? You can't just sit and wait for power to come back in that case. You've now got to basically stand up a new data center, and that's just you're going to be. Hopefully, it happens in the summer, but if it doesn't, you're toast, right?
100% correct. 100% correct. That is a sensitive topic that we've tossed around internally, and we need to get our plan in order, and we're not quite there yet.
Just out of curiosity's sake, since this has been rumbling around and you don't have your plan in order, just like a good strategic or operational plan, do you have an insight or an endpoint in this when you feel you've got to have this completed?
Ideally, I think end of the calendar year. If we don't have it in place by the end of the calendar year, we've missed the boat.
Well, you've been operating at risk for as long as you've been operating without a DR plan, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
the question is do all the decision makers recognize the risk that they're operating under? That's the real question, because that's really what's going to drive your ultimate target and the urgency of this and the priority of this issue. If they fully understand the operational risk that they're currently operating under, and they, the school board or the school board decides that it's acceptable, then maybe it's not as urgent. But from where I sit, this has got to be a huge priority.
Yeah, Jerry, to piggyback on that, my thinking is that what we're really missing here is a more formalized risk assessment around this whole topic of DR and backup that would be sort of the basis for presenting to the board and saying, here's what the risks are, here's what the options are, what do you want to sign up for? So I think the first step would be to formalize that risk assessment on this so that you have something that you can basically go to market with.
Yeah,
beyond that, I think too, it's just having I hate to say a plan for a plan, but you've got to have a plan that says we're going to start moving down this path of biting off these pieces that go into a development of a full plan.
Yeah, I mean, if you had any kind of, what I'm hearing is, you couldn't, all of your primary financial applications and everything are running, so you wouldn't be able to pay teachers. I mean, again, you're 2 or 3 days out of power this past year, was a bit of a scare, but if you had to wait 2 to 3 days to pay teachers, that they would scream and shout, but it, probably could recover from that. If you had to wait, couldn't pay them for a month, you'd be in real problem, right?
I bet Washington High School was out of power for more than a couple of days.
Yeah.
Knowing that I live on this side of town with and what we experienced.
Yep.
Well, this is definitely a topic that has to be addressed.
Yeah, and I want to recognize, Jeff, I know you're very much in the hot seat, and I've been there before. I want to make sure, that I'll at least personally volunteer to help think through some of these things. Because I know you about it a ton. I know you've been, dealing with this and the reality of not sleeping well at night, knowing what could happen. And so you've been there. So just like, Jim offering to maybe pull some strings within Volta or whatever that, may look like. same thing, if you want to bounce ideas and through this on both a global level internationally, as well as a very local level between Cedar Rapids and Des Moines, and setting up a disaster recovery plan, and doing a lot with sand snaps and things like that too. So I'm happy to be a resource to just bounce ideas off of and think through those things. And I agree, there's things that can be done for contract extensions and things like that to buy more time, but you don't want to kick the can down the road too far. So make sure you're, utilizing at least me, if not some others here on this call, to help you think through those things and get to some plan.
No, I appreciate that. And I can't really see my screen, but I think that was Aaron talking. Is that correct?
Yep, Aaron Horn.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's any of us that wouldn't agree with Aaron's comments. I mean, we're here to help you guys.
Greatly appreciate that.
That's one thing this committee's always been very good at doing, is using the assets that we have in our hands to be able to help and empower you.
So I wonder, to me, I wonder if the next step isn't putting together this risk assessment. I'm not sure where to start on that. I don't know if Jeff, if you have ideas, or if there are ideas on the team on how we could get that kicked off, and that way we can, as you say, as I think Greg said it, kind of put a plan together that gives us the needs assessment of what we really think we have to have around this. Because, we obviously knew we had some gaps in this, but we appreciate your feedback, because this is like, we thought we had things kind of covered, and now it's pretty clear to me we don't. And, so I'm wondering what that next step is right there. If we get that started, I think that's the next concrete step. And then we can look to perhaps, I'm wondering if we would think in the tactically about the SAN update, go forward with that piece without maybe the backup strategy, Jeff, and see if we get an extension from Involta in the meantime. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah.
No, that's a definite possibility.
Yeah, Jeff, Craig, I see three immediate actions, right? First and foremost, let's buy some time from Involta. That's the number one. And parallelly, let's do that risk assessment and come up with some options or proposals, and then put a plan based on which option we want to proceed. So at least, once we have the options, this committee can at least weigh in and say which option we should pursue further.
I do think if you're going to get us together, kind of have a brainstorming session, the two key things that you just need to be prepared to kind of have as input, and you might have to work with your administrative staff to get that, are RTO and RPO, right? We need to understand what's the time to, return to operation time, and what's the data baseline, right? So is it okay to lose some time on the data? And how long does it take to get back up and operational? If we understand those two things, and that's different for what works for me here and what I need is probably way different. You guys were down for 3 days, and it was painful and all of that, but that might have been okay, right? So if you just understand those two concepts, then we can really start to think about what would be some appropriate solutions, and really be able to weigh cost against, capability and that sort of thing.
Jeff, let me throw this out. I mean, as Aaron said, I'm more than willing to help out. I mean, if you wanted to schedule a hour or something like that at some point in the near future to pick our brains on risk assessment or anything else along those lines, I'm more than happy to participate. There's a ton of materials available on the internet, obviously, for this kind of thing, but we also have our individual experiences and history, and I've done some work in this arena. I'm sure others have too. So feel free to reach out if you want to schedule something like that. I'm more than happy to participate.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So I wonder if the next step, because I'm just trying to make sure we can keep moving forward here. I wonder if the next step is, Jeff, do you want to maybe see if we can get some time on your calendar? And I don't know if it makes sense to do, I don't know who all wants to be involved in this. Part of me wonders, and I'm just thinking out loud, so bear with me and bear with maybe some of my unsophisticated thinking on this, but I mean, I think that you know, the return or the tolerable downtime, lack of a better word used, much better terminology, Jerry, I think it's going to depend greatly on the system, right? The you know, so there's going to be variance within what we've got. So you know, so I'm thinking about it from a payroll perspective, right? But I'm also wondering, with as much of that as we've got hosted out, it will have shortly hosted, and it is already, it's hosted at the AEA now, but will be hosted much further out in the near future because we're transitioning that system as well. You know, I'm almost wondering if it makes sense. I don't know. I'm wondering if it makes sense to if you're probably just going to have to go through them system by system, right?
That's the risk assessment that Greg's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually where it starts, is with an evaluation of your systems, and then to determine what the sensitivity or recovery requirements are for each individual system or subsystem.
Right.
And that you know, that again, I mean, again, that's something we can help you at least structurally organized, if not, you know, go through the details on.
Well, it sounds like we probably need to set a meeting to do that, don't you think? Isn't that the
Agreed.
next step?
Yep.
Okay. So do we want to compare calendars and get something plotted out like right now so we can get that flag in the ground?
Sure.
All right. So Jeff, I'm going to let you drive that. I don't use my calendar as a limiter. I'll attend if I can. But why don't you guys go together and start throwing out some dates that seem like they work, and then I'll throw it on mine if I can make it.
Would it be helpful to Jeff, if he's going to kind of lead this charge, to get him kind of some thinking points that he could utilize to put the school districts, different systems and things, make sure that everything's covered, and so when we have a conversation, we're not leaving anything out. I mean, CRST's been through this, well, so many companies. I mean, just if he had a worksheet to help him.
That's
Okay.
That would be very helpful, honestly. It would give me some time to make sure I'm prepared to have the conversation with
Yeah,
you.
I just want it to be the most productive for you, and since this is so important, and to make the meeting, to grab the brain trust that you've got there, well, here on with this group, just to, I mean, Kavi, do you have access to anything like that, or Jerry within?
Yeah, no, I'll be absolutely be happy to think about what a DR planning worksheet should look like. I'll figure out. I'll talk to our infrastructure lead and see if she's got anything handy, or we'll see if we can dust off our plans from our. I mean, we went through this 5 years ago.
I may have some documents too that I can share. I'll do some research and see if I can find something that would be a good, you know, sort of basic template.
I just want Jeff to be comfortable when basically corporations are saying this is how we do it. Sure. And you know, it's maybe not necessarily apples to oranges, but I want Jeff to have been able to give good thought to that, and anything that you can add from this group as a primer to him, I think would be great and helpful to all of us.
Sure. Good idea, Tim.
So can we just leave it, I guess, as kind of an understanding that Jerry, you'll take a look at something, maybe Kavi, you will too, and whatever we think we can gather, we could obviously ship over to Jeff.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Tim, I have a real basic template too that I can share if you're all interested.
Well, that's good, Greg. I mean, I think the more the better to a point. I mean, obviously, you know, you can look at the different sheets or outlines and pick the best from everything.
And there's 100 different ways to do it too.
Sure.
Jeff, I'll send you over something here, probably sometime in the next day or so.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg.
Great, because that'll be helpful to you. Good. Next. How are we doing on timing there, Craig?
Well, we're in about an hour, so
I just want to make sure that
where
everybody
we're at
else is.
meeting, or I'm sorry.
Yeah, if we want to continue, I can circle back after the meeting on calendar timing and try to line up a meeting after we're done.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
Yep.
that does make total sense. Let's do that.
Okay.
Okay, let's let the meetings continue.
All right, perfect. All right, the next topic is our computer refresh. So this year, we're focused on middle school staff, and the selected device is just the next version up from what we did for our elementary staff last year. It's the Dell Latitude 5420, and that standard package will also include the docking station and a monitor. Pretty straightforward. Right now, we're looking at 525 staff members that are due for upgrades.
And are you sending this out for bids?
Right now, we're still inside our last bid contract with Dell.
Okay,
So we would just continue to piggyback on that last bid. I have to double check. I believe this is the last year of that agreement.
That's right.
Looks like they're $869 a piece. That's not a bad price.
It's higher than we're comfortable with. We haven't paid that price before, but with everything going on in the world and the way supply chains are working, it's understandable why they are where they are.
You may also
Okay.
find some delivery delays too, with any kind of quantity.
Agree, which is one of the reasons why as soon as we get kind of that final approval and kind of get it through the board, we'll order them as soon as we get that final approval.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm hearing anywhere between 1 month to 3 month delays are happening, shipments from China. Just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yep, that makes perfect sense, and it kind of fills into that next conversation on classroom presentation replacement, which is an area we have seen some delays. So right now, most of our elementary and middle schools have Promethean boards that are starting to get up in that 7, 8, 9, 10-year range. We have roughly 575 of them across the district, and our goal is to get those swapped out over the next 3 years. So the solution that we're looking at is a interactive laser projector. It's the Epson BrightLink 725 WI that has an active speaker in it. And then we would also use it's a Brio board. It's a projection board. No interactivity built into the board at all. It's just a standard board designed for projection. And then we'd include a document camera, and then the monitor and docking station would be wired into this classroom presentation process. So the thought process with this concept kind of continues with what we did last year, and it's meant to be software agnostic. So teachers can use whatever software they're comfortable with, and it's a projector and a board that connects up to their laptop and presents what they're using. So the thought is, in the first year this year, we would look at 158 classrooms and then divide up the remaining between the following 2 years. And this is an area where we have seen lags simply because the demand for devices is out there. The document cameras themselves are the one that we've seen the biggest delay on. They're really difficult to come by at this time. And then I know we've had some conversations with some of our vendors about the projector itself. And we've got a handful of them that we've brought in for demo. And the time on those was roughly 3 to 4 weeks to get it. When we order in bulk, we're expecting that could increase.
This equipment is all tried and tested, and we got good feedback from the students and the faculty, correct, Jeff?
Correct. We've got a demo set up at what is now Coolidge Elementary, and they've been going through it now for several weeks, and so far they love it. We also put some of these in place at Madison and Garfield, and so far the feedback there has been equally positive.
Jeff, the installation costs are somewhat substantial. Is there anything particular about those that's worth mentioning?
My understanding is most of those come from internal costs. We work with our facilities department to have our carpenters go out, prep the surfaces, rip all the old equipment off the wall, repair the wall, and then put the new equipment up. So once they get the brackets and stuff in place, then our team actually comes out and mounts the board, mounts the projector, mounts the speaker. I can actually get a better breakdown of those costs if you'd like to see them.
No, I was just curious. So it is somewhat some internal labor as well.
Yeah.
So,
It is.
Greg.
We've got several different groups involved.
Yeah, Greg, when we were putting in the Prometheus boards and all that, we ran into the same thing.
Yeah.
Had to do a lot of work behind the wall just for support.
I think the difference is, though, is that when we were putting those in, that was the first time we were actually pulling wire to some of those locations. So I'm assuming that we can reuse, the electrical outlet and the piece of coax that goes back, behind it and that sort of thing.
Actually, we reused the electrical, but the other cabling, a lot of that was VGA, so we're upgrading that to HDMI.
Wow. Wait, talk about feeling old.
Jim, you and Kavi and I are the only ones that are around before those were even installed. That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. I know.
Yeah.
They've certainly served their purpose, and the technology has definitely moved on. So
Yes.
Very true. Very true.
Okay.
All right. The next one is network equipment upgrades. So most of the stuff in this conversation was what we talked about at the end of February, early March. We've already moved forward with those, and we're in good shape with those. The only piece that's still out there is with our existing firewalls. So right now, we just finished our first 5 years on the hardware. The hardware is still functioning exactly as intended. We're not seeing any problems with the hardware. However, the vendor does 1 year or 3 year maintenance windows. We're not comfortable going a full 3 years on that piece of hardware any longer. So we plan to do a 1 year agreement and then reevaluate it over the course of the year to determine how we want to proceed next year. My thought is we'll probably be coming back to you next year looking at replacing the pair of firewalls. Okay. Any concerns on that one?
Are they not end of lifing the networking equipment?
They are not. So we had a few conversations with the vendor, and at this time they do not have an end of life on this exact firewall, but they won't guarantee it's going to make it 3 years. So that leads us to the 1 year conversation.
They won't guarantee the hardware itself will last. I mean, you're into the discussion of the vendor wants to end of life it way before I'm ready. So they're going to continue support on it, but we're just afraid the hardware itself is too old. Is that the issue?
You broke up just a little bit, but if I got that correctly, is the question that making sure that this is driven from our perspective and not the vendor perspective? Did I understand that right?
Yeah, because if they're willing to support it and they're not talking about end of lifing it, are we just worried the actual hardware itself is going to fail?
At that point, if we signed a 3 year agreement, those firewalls would be pushing 8 years. So I don't know that I'd be comfortable being in a 3 year agreement on 5 year old equipment, extending it out to 8 years.
Well,
So I agree that is where I'm at. I don't know that I trust the equipment to go all the way out.
Well, the question is, what does the maintenance agreement cover? So, for instance, if you get a 3 year deal and if the manufacturer is saying, or whoever the vendor is saying, we will provide you a 3 year support on this particular piece of hardware, if that support includes replacement costs, if it breaks, then there's no risk to you, right? If they're willing to support it for 3 years, really, typically this comes down to cost. And generally what happens is the vendor starts to say, if you want me to provide you support for 3 years on this 5-year device, it's going to cost you 3 arms and 2 legs, because that might break and I'll have to replace it. So that, I think that's the question, Aaron, if that was Aaron, that he's asking, is if they're willing to support it, what's our problem?
Understand. Got it.
Now, if they're telling you support is, that the support contract is limited to, we'll take your support calls and do your support tickets, but if it breaks, that's not our problem. Then now you have a decision to make. But if their support contract includes replacement costs if the thing fails, then it's their problem, then it's just a real matter of cost.
Right. So the previous agreement did include next day hardware. The current 1 year, I will double check it, but I do not believe that, well, actually, no, I believe it. I'll double check it, but I believe it does still include hardware replacement if it fails. So
yeah, so
that's an excellent point. I'll have to double check all that, but you make a very good point that I didn't think about.
Yeah, so if it ends up being, if the terms of the support end up being the same as your initial 5-year period, you get full replacement costs. If it breaks, they come out, they support it, they do all those things, then it really comes down to the cost of the support contract versus the cost of replacement and a new 5-year contract. That's generally how that works.
Okay, I will do some more digging on those proposals and just verify those details.
And you could make a note of that in the meeting notes, so you can bring us up to date.
Okay, I will do that. I will do that.
Thanks so much.
Okay. The next piece is the bulk of our software licensing renewals. So all of this except one piece focuses on renewals of existing licenses. The only thing in there that would be new is a tool called Managed Methods, which interfaces into our Google domain and gives us log aggregation and different types of notification looking at different specific alerts. And that's a product we have not committed to. It's a product that we're still reviewing. That's a possibility we may want to move forward with it. So that is the only piece of software on there that would be a new purchase.
Who is the vendor for that, Jeff?
That actually is the name of the vendor. It's an organization that focuses on the Google side of things for education specifically.
Okay, so did we check with Google whether they have a similar product?
Google does not have a specific product for this, and actually this is one of the vendors they do recommend. They recommend them through our educational partners. So they're one of the partners that Google has lined up.
Okay.
Jeff, does that tool limited to the Google environment, or does it also allow you to manage logs from other devices or other sources?
It has limited functionality that you can add into like Zoom and Office 365. Those aren't real big tools for us. The Zoom stuff is mostly used exactly like we're using it right now for meetings that need public streaming. So it's a pretty small usage case. We generally know exactly who's using it. It's Justin. When it comes to Office 365, our usage on Office 365 has dropped tremendously since we slid over to Google. So those are the other primary vendor or primary products they do business with.
So what's the plan here, Jeff? If we buy that software, do we intend to host it on-prem, or this will go on Google Cloud?
It is 100% a Google Cloud product. That is the way they sell it. So it goes into a Google platform instance.
Okay.
All right. So a long list of softwares. Anybody has any questions about any of the other products? Okay, I'll jump on to JCN expenses. So as we mentioned earlier, we have a partnership with the city of Cedar Rapids and Lynn County to own and maintain our own fiber optic ring around the city. And there are annual costs to cover the construction, the locates, and the splicing. Last year, that cost was somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000. I think it was around 48 and some change. This year, we're projecting it to be a little bit higher simply because there is a great deal of construction we've been alerted to that kind of deal with flood walls and different road construction projects throughout the city along the routes that we are in. So I don't know that we'll use that entire amount of money, but I wanted to make sure I left room for growth because I know it's going to be a busy year for construction.
And you're simply required by the partnership to pony up when there are relocates, et cetera, that are required by, for example, the city and the flood control program.
Correct.
Yeah.
Especially if
same thing with
yep.
IMOM and with the city and with the county as well.
So yeah, if they fall along the routes that are ours, then yes, we incur responsibilities.
Well, we got a hell of a deal on it in the first place, so I don't feel too bad about that.
Completely agree. And when we look at the cost that it would take to have circuits all over town from different vendors, we still know this is still a very good deal for us.
I think we saved a minimum of $4 million.
I would agree. There's significant savings there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're just not sure what the number is because you don't know what's going to happen yet.
Right. The estimates I've been given so far are slightly above 50.
Okay.
But with all the projects they've informed me that are happening, I won't be surprised if that number climbs higher.
Okay.
Well, you got to have it. So
Yeah.
All right. And then the last item on the list is security. So we are looking at vendors to do a full security audit and penetration testing. Because it's been a couple years since this was last done. I believe it was Lori's last year, 2019, the last time any of this stuff happened. We were in progress to present this last spring, and then we changed course and pulled this off of our plan to get through COVID. Now that we're through that, we're 100% focused on getting another evaluation done so we know any weaknesses we may have and can get a path to correcting some of those weaknesses. So we haven't selected a vendor yet. We're still screening a few vendors. Right now, primary vendors that I've spoken to out of the gate are Pro Circular out of Coralville, and then RSM with some representation here in town.
Yep.
And then recommendation is there's another vendor in Ankeny area. I believe their name is Pratum that I have yet to speak with, and I'm still working on.
what's the cost of this?
Estimating that cost is going to be somewhere around $45,000.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeff, I heard some good things about Pro Circular a while ago, though. You may want to double check, but a couple of years ago.
100% copy. I've talked with all the UEN districts, and about 4 or 5 of them have used them and have had nothing but positive reviews.
They're our primary security partner.
Yep, I would add a +1 to that. We used them at the railroad for pen testing as well.
Hey, Jeff, if they do find some issues that need to be remediated, how do you fund that?
Well, that likely comes back to the same funding source. SAVE will be our primary funding source. So as we get into those, we'll probably sit down and have another conversation with all of you about courses of action and recommendations.
Okay, that's fine. Just curious. This budget isn't intended to cover any of that, I take it.
No, this is basically to get the assessment so we know what we need to focus on.
Okay.
All right, that is the end of my list for all of you tonight. So I will kick it back over to Craig.
Can you just walk us through the numbers just one more time? So you said, so the total is 2.8, 2.6 is new for this year, and you said you had 2.9 last year that's going to be completely reimbursed.
Yes, so I'm switching over to bring that up on screen here. So as we scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the left side. We've got our new save funds of 2.6 and the carryover. So this carryover 1.778 is exactly what we have presently. So that's what we've been reimbursed to date.
Okay, but you're expecting that to go to 2.9.
We've been told it will go to 2.9.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
So the only reason I have two columns is because I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
So I don't want to count that yet. I want to wait till it's actually there.
that makes
And
sense.
Jeff, you've been told that those funds will be here within this budget period. So it's not going to be held. away.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I just don't. I think they just haven't gotten around to doing all of the journal entries and such to make it happen. Because at this point, there's no pressing need for the money until after we talk. Then we'll go back and have a conversation with the CFO's team. But even then, what we're anticipating here probably isn't gonna come out of that when we look at the new allocated money.
And are you in conversations with the CFO? Do you know that you're going to get all this money when it comes back in?
You're talking the next year's allocation and
Well, the difference between the 1.7 up to the 2.9.
yes, we've had conversations. It's coming. It just hasn't happened yet.
No, I know it's coming. My question
Okay, sorry.
is the technology going to get it? They're not going to use these funds in another area.
No, these are earmarked, Tim. I'm
for
sorry.
infrastructure or anything else.
Nope, these are earmarked. We were
Okay.
earmarked 2.9 million out of the first two ESSER funds. So,
Hey, Craig, just
Yeah.
to piggyback on Tim's question, is there any, let's assume this money is available for you. Is there any spend by date since this is coming from a different pool? Is it going to be available all through this fiscal year, or you have a different timeline for spending this money?
yeah, so that's a great question. So we have to take the ESSER money and allocate it in the next 2.5 years. But so we've got a long horizon for this. I think once the money hits our account, that's considered encumbered from the district perspective. So I think we're good. I think the money once it hits our funds, I think we're good going forward. But from the district perspective, it's looked at as across 2.5 years.
And what is the time frame for when you anticipate this unknown variable being a known variable?
We haven't been able to pin them down on that. I know it's going to be in the next. I know we're talking probably weeks. I mean, it's and I say that is a outset that we don't have that many weeks left in the fiscal year, but we anticipate it'll be done long before July 1. But we haven't been able to pin him down on that yet.
Okay.
And is it my understanding that this kind of money is flowing to school districts all over the state, all over the country?
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, just to give you an idea, we got about there's three allocations of ESSER funds that have hit us, and the first one was oh boy, it was so long ago. I'm not going to get the number exactly right, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 or $4 million, and that was way back in right at the end of summer. The next round of stimulus money hit us about. It's just coming in. We got word of it about 6-8 weeks ago for the ESSER 2 monies, and that was based upon Title I status. So it's not like there's a flat rate that all schools are getting. So
Okay.
understand that too, that the higher the qualified the school is for Title I, meaning the more meal assistance, the more poverty it serves, the more weighted spending you get or more funding you get. And the last round was 14.4 million. We're expecting a third allocation, and we still don't know what that is, which we believe will be even higher than that. So it was pretty easy for them to commit to, once we got that 14.4, to say, yeah, we're going to make you whole. So I really don't have any doubt that just coming, it's gonna filter over to us. There's just, like everybody else, they're kind of moving through a lot of other detail at this time.
Well, even if it doesn't come, this spending plan leaves you with a surplus of 1.5, and even if we feel compelled to invest some additional money into DR in the near term, you should have a good bit of remaining funds to handle that, and then anything that comes out of the security vulnerability, and then probably still not deplete the rest of the funds. So
I'm sorry, Jared, go ahead.
No, that was the point I was making. So it looks pretty good to me.
It's pretty healthy. And the thing you don't see factored in here, that's conspicuously missing, is that we paid for a Chromebook refresh this year out of another fund that was held back, which we had some project funds that were an additional funding source for us that our CFO told us we really needed to spend down. They didn't want to carry that year to year. And so we really did that. That'll start incurring again next year. So we'll have that, and if there's another tab on this sheet that Jeff can show you, which projects out into next year, which we have another, $1.2 million earmarked for student devices. But, that being said, even with that factored in, we're still in a very solid position. Because I do anticipate that the security and DR, obviously, the DR is a new we knew we were going to spend some money to do some offsite work. We just didn't know how much. And this, our conversation here sort of changed our timetable and our thinking about that clearly. And so I appreciate that. So I think we'll probably incur some costs more quickly there than we anticipated. But again, I think we got plenty of room for it right now. At least I hope. It sure looks that way. So.
We're smart about it.
Yep. So what other questions do you have for us on the numbers?
And good, Craig. Right now, like Jerry said, we'll have a lot more discussion once we have some insights into which direction we want to go with DR.
Totally agree. Would you feel comfortable, would anybody on the team feel comfortable if we were to sort of, like I said, put a pin in the backup portion of the SAN discussion, but give us permission to go ahead and spend on the rest of these so we can get some of these other purchases rolling? Would you feel comfortable in doing that tonight? That's, I guess, my question.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Probably I'll let Tim take it from here.
Well, you need a motion, but let's we kind of need to qualify anyway, what you're asking for.
Okay.
Or if the list is too long, what aren't you asking for?
Well, I think, yeah. So Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit, pull out the SAN piece there? I mean, I think you should be able to do this dynamically, right?
Yeah, so essentially what we're looking at taking out then would be the backup hardware and the Veeam licensing. Those would be the two things that we'd put a pin in and put on hold.
Okay. So all the SAN except for the backup and the Veeam.
Correct. So
Yep.
Rows 5 and 6 would be the two that we would exclude at this point.
Okay. And
Makes
then,
sense to me.
yep. And then you still want to get the latitudes and all that, right? And
Cor-
and everything.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Correct.
So-
Yep. Everything else down the list we'd be asking for approval. Correct.
Okay,
That's what we're asking for. Yep.
okay. So we need a motion for approve the proposed save expenditures for 2021-22 minus a hold on the backup hardware and the Veeam licensing.
So moved.
I'll make
Can
a
I get a
second.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, you've got your approval.
Thank you so much, team. And
Thank you, everybody.
thank you for all of your, I mean, all of your thoughts around particularly the DR conversation. That was really, really helpful. And I can't wait for this work to go forward. It's fantastic.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I've seen very few companies with a good DR plan.
It does make you feel a little better.
It does. It does.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
Well,
Well,
and
you
and I
guys
think
have all
Aaron
had a-
mentioned it. Aaron mentioned it earlier, but we're, just to reiterate, we're definitely not trying to pick on you guys at all. Well, I think some of our comments we're learning as we're going and making some mental observations. And so hopefully that didn't come across as criticism in any way.
Oh, absolutely not. Completely understand.
Didn't feel like it to me, guys.
Yeah. And we're here to help. So
Well, we understand everything you guys have gone through this year, and you've done just a stalwart job of getting everybody back online as fast as you could and enabling us to do at home and in-class learning. And, we admire everything that you've done and we appreciate it. And
absolutely.
we just want to help. So to back up on Jerry, we're not being critical. We just want to help. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yep,
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
So,
we want to get better, guys, and this helps. Thank
Yeah.
you.
so Jerry and Greg and Aaron or whoever, they're going to ship maybe some information over to you so you can do a little planning for the DR, and then you're going to get us some stuff, and then we'll work out a time frame when we're going to get together.
That sounds good. And I also still owe you some additional information on the firewall contract.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And you
Yep.
owe me a memo to Involta.
Thank you. That too. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and that's, yeah, Jim would be great for that, obviously. So great. If we don't have anything else, I would entertain a motion to call this meeting to an end.
So moved.
So moved.
Good,
Second.
good. Let's do it then. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time as always. And we'll, looks like we got more fun for down the road.
Yeah, we'll be in.